Warm greetings to the august audience of the conference. I would like to thank the chairperson and co-chairperson for nice introductions. It is my honor to present Dr. P S N Reddy Oration, which is an epitome of the students' love for their teacher and which celebrates the noble profession of teaching. Let me first share my screen. At the outset, I would extend my sincere thanks to the office bearers of Maharashtra branch of IAPSM and the organizing committee of the 49th annual national conference of IAPSM and 23rd joint IAPSM and IPHA conference Maharashtra chapter 2022 for honoring me with the prestigious Dr. P.N.S. Reddy oration. Today, I am going to put forth my views very humbly for all seniors and junior public health experts to ponder upon. The topic that I want to discuss is in line with the theme of the conference and with the current times. And it is the missing links in pandemic response. The reasons why I chose this topic. The first reason was that I wanted to share my first-hand experience about my small contribution in social media platform. I have been working on this for 575 days and still counting. The second most important reason is that this will not be the last pandemic. Bill Gates is correct. We need to take pandemic preparedness very seriously. And I have chosen this topic as a tribute to the martyrs of healthcare workers. We have lost many, and yes, this is a war of humanity against the pathogens. Let's prevent more casualties. A chain is as strong as the weakest link, and that is the reason why we have to identify these weak links so that they won't break and compromise our safety. Then we have to work on strengthening them so that in future disasters we are in a better position to respond in a safe way. History teaches us that men and nations behave wisely once they have exhausted all other alternatives. Now, this is very curious fact, right? And are 2 years and 2 months sufficient to learn our lessons? Again, what we learn from history is that we do not learn anything from the history. So it's our duty to consciously look in the history and identify the issues which we did wrong in current situation, and that is why conscious efforts are needed. This is a wonderful infographic. It shows the largest pandemics in the history of humankind. Now, COVID-19 was here in March 2020. So what has happened in March 22nd, that is in 2 years? Corona was successful to become the 7th largest pandemic humankind has seen. This is based on the direct mortality reported. But if we take the estimated mortality, which could be as high as 6 times, so then obviously it becomes the 6th largest pandemic in the human history. But if we add to that the indirect deaths and the economic loss and all other things and the fact that it is not still over, then it may give a very tough competition to HIV/AIDS pandemic, which is there for last 40 years, and the damages that corona has done could be equivalent within just few years. One more interesting fact about this infographic is, if you focus on the years of these various pandemics, you can see that all the biggest pandemics have happened centuries ago. And this is the only modern pandemic that could reach this 7th number in the rank. So it is not mandatory that the future pandemics, because we are in modern world, they will be smaller. It can happen that in future pandemics also we can see quite a devastation and let's see how it happens. So in this slide, I have compared the last 3 coronaviruses. We all know that SARS-CoV-2 is the 7th coronavirus of importance which can infect humans, and before that SARS-CoV-1 and MERS were there. These are the emerging diseases. I have also included the Spanish flu from 1918 to 1999, which was a comparable pandemic to SARS-CoV-2 because it was the biggest pandemic in last 100 years, whereas SARS-CoV-2 is the biggest pandemic in modern world. In Spanish flu, as you can see, around 500 million cases, around 1/3 of the world population was affected, and the deaths were estimated 20 to 50 million deaths. Case fatality rate was found to be around 18 to 20%. It was quite high as compared to SARS-CoV-2, and it was coincident with the World War I, and virus was not known, as well as purple deaths, means there was no means for recovering from the hypoxia. SARS-CoV-1 from 2002, it was the first pandemic of the century where 26 countries have affected. But we could contain it to merely 8,000 cases. But the case fatality rate was around 10%, and it was also quite high. It has shown that public health and social measure work, and the most important reason was the highest infectivity was seen after the symptoms occur. So isolation was very easy. Then came MERS, which actually never had the pandemic potential as such, but it is circulating, and it is evident by repeated outbreaks in different countries. The key factor here is that it has shown that a coronavirus can have a very high case fatality rate, which was in the range of 20 to 36%. And one more key finding here was majority of the infections happened in hospital setups. Healthcare workers were the people who died in MERS. So this is a very important disease which we have to remember. Then in 2019 came SARS-CoV-2, that is the current pandemic. And as you can see, we are inching towards being a similar case fatality to Spanish flu. While because the case fatality rate is less, it is 1.5 to 4%, the deaths are around 6 million. The key factor here was the spread begins in preclinical asymptomatic phase, and that's why having quarantine and isolation were the key factors again here. One more point is that long COVID, because of so many people being affected, in future we are going to see many cases of long COVID. The condition we do not understand fully. Now what about the future? We all have to remember that the picture of the pandemic could be quite different as shown by all these examples, and it mainly depends on the characteristics of the virus. And we all know that no one can predict what characteristics the future pandemic prone virus will have. We have seen that media discussed NeoCov as one of the future candidates, which is just one mutation away from being able to infect the humans. And if it happens, then it will have the infectivity level of SARS-CoV-2, but the mortality level or the case fatality level for this could be as high as 36% because it is type of MERS virus. Now you can just imagine what an havoc it will cause if this becomes a pandemic of future. And at that time, we will have to fight against infodemic just like now. It could be more strong by that time, and there will be lots of distrust in the community. So it is very important that we work on this. So if we try to compare 1918 pandemic and 2019 pandemic, you will see that there is very stark differences, and so many differences are there, and we were expected to be in better position because this virus was not so virulent, advanced, Healthcare was available. We could do viral genome mapping. We can identify all the variants very easily. Tests were made available in no time. Antibiotics are available now. Multiple vaccines were made available within record time, and ventilators also were available to save the lives. But the factors which played role was air travel, because there is a very fast movement. There is overcrowding because now the population is around 6 times more, as well as there is no coordination in the countries. The countries have not learned their lessons, and there is huge inequity in healthcare as well as in vaccine availability. So there are these issues which caused a case with very low fatality rate to be the 7th largest pandemic in human history. After SARS-1 pandemic, this book has come out by WHO, SARS, How a Global Epidemic Was Stopped. I'm not sure how many of you have seen this, but this was a success story because we could stop a pandemic in merely 8,000 cases. And they say that they have eradicated this virus because it is not in the circulation. So what are these 13 lessons that were discussed in this book? That we were lucky at that time, and it was mere luck that they could stop it. And this is shown from the present pandemic, because this time we were not lucky. Transparency is the best policy while dealing with information. Public health is a very serious business. Human rights are to be protected in pandemic management. Media plays a very critical role, and in this pandemic also we have seen this, that media was the key to either promote or promote information or promote misinformation. The first pandemic showed that 19th century techniques of public health, that is quarantine and isolation, are the key which can help us to deal with any pandemic even in current modern areas. We have to work in partnerships. Then modern modes of communication will play the role for pandemic control, as well as in this pandemic we have seen that modern modes of communication and the social media platforms were the main arenas where misinformation was thriving. Clear travel guidelines were needed, and again this pandemic has underlined this. Animal husbandry is the key because it has shown time and again that it can affect the human health very badly. Frontliners are the people who can lead the team, and obviously public health experts should be the frontliners. Along with national disaster surveillance systems, we need some informal avenues of reporting, because unless we can identify all the cases and we monitor, it is difficult to control such big pandemics. And most importantly, barrier nursing and hospital infection control measures are to be focused on, and they have to be practiced with utmost care. So all these lessons and the lessons we have learnt in this current pandemic, we have to learn from them, and we have to include them in our future actions. Because we all know that now the world is a global village. Whatever happens in any remote country could have very harsh repercussions on any country which is remotely placed, because no one is safe until everyone is safe. So we have to work together, we have to work in unison as a world as a whole. So at the end of 2 years of this pandemic, do we expect that community has learned their lessons? So what are exactly they saying? Now, I'm very sorry to say that this was the infographic which I received in WhatsApp. This was shared by a person staying in Germany, so he is highly educated, shared with his family, and the person who started sharing it with family and friend was again an educated person from India. And I just want to say that still after 2 years, people are sharing with each other that do not trust that COVID is true, Omicron is true, or testing, vaccines, everything is true. For the sake of records, I want to say that this infographic is false. It is giving wrong information, it is misinformation, and it is one of the conspiracy theorist person. So this is the picture after 2 years of pandemic. The community has distrust on everything that is protective. It does not trust governments, community does not trust on masks, on testings, on isolation, on quarantine, not on vaccines, and also not on doctors. Why this has happened? The main reason is that misinformation and disinformation targets various biases. Now, what are these biases? These are some inherent beliefs in the people's mind. One of them is optimism bias. Now, this is the difference between a person's expectation and the outcome that follows. Many times, we have seen that people do not believe that they are at risk of getting corona. They have hope that they will be protected. And you have seen such kind of messages. We Indians have better immunity, so we will not suffer in this pandemic. Because now that we have a good herd immunity because of infections, there won't be any future wave. Such type of messages target on this optimism bias, and that is the reason even many doctors have not taken the vaccines, because they feel that they do not need it. They hope that they are already immune because of their exposure to virus. There is one more, confirmation bias, and social media plays a very big role in this, because social media is governed by algorithms. And in algorithms, usually a person tends to see only that information to which he has certain belief. So this confirmation bias says that everyone seeks or interprets the evidence, only that evidence that aligns with existing belief and expectations. That means if a person does not trust WHO, he will just find various messages which will say that WHO is wrong, or he will find the messages which will say that corona is not true. One more important issue here is inoculation theory. It says that uh, their first encoding of misinformation is the final one, because the person, whatever he exposes to first, inoculation of any fact, whether it is information or misinformation, that will remain with him, and it will be very difficult to shake it off. Now, because of the extent of the misinformation in social media, usually persons were exposed to misinformation first. Even before we could tell them how masks are useful, many people have seen the messages where they have talked about the pore size and virus size and all those things, and many people believe that masks do not work. They said that carbon dioxide is built up inside the mask, and that is the reason for headaches, and that's why one shouldn't wear the mask. Such type of messages stayed with them. We cannot remove those beliefs and notions. Similarly, when doctors saw the message that CDC has now it has scrapped the RT-PCR test because it is not a good test, then doctors also started believing that, and many doctors stopped advising people from getting the test. So we have to keep all these in minds, and then we have to plan our action. One more key factor is that we all are aware that whenever some disaster is there, we think of disaster cycle. There is an incident, then there is a phase where we give response in the acute phase, then there is recovery phase which leads to mitigation and improvement in the preparedness. This is true for majority of the disasters, but disasters like pandemic, which are biological disasters, they do not go in this fashion. It is proposed that the response to uh, disasters related to pandemic, though they go in this spiral way. And why so? Because uh, the pandemics are different in that they come in waves. It may happen because of the waning immunity, or it may happen because of the emergence of new variants as such. And because of that, the community has to go back and forth from response to recovery, and when next wave comes, immediately back to response, and then again to recovery. Now this is very tiring, and this also leads to changes in the guidelines, rapid changes in the guidelines, and sometimes people feel that all these are not misdirected, and they start not they decide not to believe on the guidelines. So we have to understand that this is what will happen when we respond to any pandemic, and we have to focus on recovery as well as on response at the same time, and also on preparedness. So this will be a long process whenever there is any pandemic. And we also have to remember one important fact: false reassurance is the worst thing you can do. Don't withhold information because people will think you know more. Tell the truth. Don't manage the truth. If you don't know something, say why you don't know and say what you need to do to know. Drown people with the truth rather than withhold it. We have seen this action of false reassurance or early reassurance or early celebrations from the first wave itself. People were repeatedly told that there won't be any next wave, or they were told to be reassured that they will be safer. But this only caused more damage, because afterwards every reassurance was proven false. And we have to remember this, that we have to give only the truth, and we have to always remind the people that caution is the key while dealing with pandemics. So apart from these, there were many lacunae that were identified, and these are few of these. The more important one was absence of any communication channel. We do not have any trustworthy channel from people's point of view, as well as whenever communication is there, it has to be two-way, and there are not many options for that. There was no channel to understand people's concern and address them. We saw that the sense of social responsibility was quite low in case of community as well as in case of medical fraternity, because communities do not understand or were not ready to take cautions for the sake of our community. Medical advices kept changing, and because of that many did not follow the guidelines. Also there was polypharmacy. Even when the guidelines had changed, people did not stop using those drugs. They just kept on adding the newly recommended drugs in the hope that something will work out of all the cocktail. Similarly, all the pathies tried to give their best, and because of that there was contradictory advices or messages like corona will stay in nose for 10 minutes and then it will hop to your lungs in after half an hour, and just before that you have to take the steam. Such type of messages were there. Infodemic management was lacking. There is no mechanism to counter misinformation, and there was no amplification of correct information also. Inequality issues were very huge. The most important one which was disclosed is the weak urban infrastructure. So it was very difficult to practice contact tracing in urban areas, as well as there was disparity in various states in say health status or their availability of resources, as well as in case of reporting also. There were few policy matters. For example, we have to decide regarding our policy for international travelers. In this pandemic, it is shown that international travel will be the seeding point, and we have to find out ways to minimize this risk, as well as we need some criteria to impose or remove the restrictions, which will give clarity for the population, and it will be easier to follow these guidelines. So we have to work on all these channels, and one by one we have to focus on this. Like I promised, let's see my story, obviously in short. And why I am sharing this? Because I just want to say mumkin hai. It is just my own efforts, and just imagine what will happen when we all together can have similar guided efforts. So I want to share my experience. I started working in August 2020 from Facebook page, and it is the experience till February 2022. So in the first wave, I didn't have much readership. I was writing. In second wave, readership started increasing, while in third wave, people started to take notice, as well as they started recommending to each other. So this just underlines the fact that it will take time, and if we start now, then probably by next pandemic, we will be ready with some good, trustworthy two-way communication channels to fight the infodemic which will accompany the next pandemic. So what things I could not do, which can be included in our collective effort, is use of infographics, because a picture can talk 1,000 words, right? So we have to focus on that area which I could not. Also use of all social media platforms, because if we want to focus youngsters, we have to go for Insta or any new platform that comes up. I couldn't use videos and audios to full extent, again, which has a very large penetration, and I could not stay ahead of infodemic. There were many lost opportunities, and it was not possible because I was doing my regular work as well as this additional work. So this is our page on Facebook, and I want to highlight here that Facebook has flagged it that it is sharing COVID-19 information, and Facebook algorithms usually try to suppress such type of information, and I have to fight a lot or struggle a lot to get ahead of this and to reach people. I wanted to see what was the reach of this page so that I can share with you. So this is the Excel sheet which Facebook has provided me, and as you can see in this last duration from August 2020 to February 2022, the page could reach around 7,40,000 people. And this is not the end, because then I started using my own wall, and on my wall the response is better, more readership is there, but I don't have any data on that. Apart from that, I have requested people to share this information on WhatsApp, and through WhatsApp this information might have reached to many more, and again I don't have any data regarding that. To share the information with WhatsApp and in other platforms, the students of Government Medical College Miraj formed GMCM Army, and they helped to run Instagram handle for some time, through which we shared the students' involvement or students' input, their posters and in various infographics, and we tried to do that as a team. Also, we had a YouTube channel where the videos were shared, and though it was not regular and followed up as a YouTube channel, still we could reach the 10,000 viewership. So this is what is possible if we go for it, and I want to share this table which shows which type of posts were created, and as you can see that hashtags were very varied. I could fight misinformation, some were fighting myths, some were giving guided information that were the questions that were asked, or some COVID survival tips were shared which helped them to stay safe. Similarly, some information regarding how epidemics works, such type of posts were shared, and people like to read about all these things. So was there any impact of all this work? We all know that it's very difficult to assess all the impact that a preventive work can cause, but I can share some of them with you. This is some feedback from a teacher who said that whatever information was shared, he shared it with his students, and they all are following it. One more teacher said that this is a principal, and he said that all the teachers now are using N95 masks to improve their protection, and these messages were important for me, because in schools we can reach the students which are the future generation, and they should have the correct way to fight a pandemic, and that's why these messages are important. Apart from this, people started sharing the posts and trying to recommend it and understanding the importance of fighting misinformation. Similarly, some of them started calling out the misinformation whenever they see it, and they started countering it. They started giving out correct information, and this is what we want, that people should try to remove misinformation from circulation. Similarly, some people contacted me and said that they had fear about vaccines, but because they could get the information on which they can take informed decision, and now they are ready to take the vaccines. And this was one of the special messages because one student from GMC Chandrapur contacted me and said that he wants to do MD in PSM. Now what else a teacher wants, right? So what we have to do is, let's amplify information to drown misinformation. Being the first, fast and frequent is the key. Debunking misinformation and disinformation is a difficult task, but is the most essential step for community cooperation. And if we want to strive for community cooperation, we have to understand few principles, like we have to listen to their concerns and we have to give what they want. We have to engage them. Just telling them that what to do will not be effective. We have to engage them, so two-way communication is needed. We have to be transparent and sharing all the correct information. We want the communities to involve and it has to be a two-way thing. We have to acknowledge all the uncertainty that is there. We have to create this in local language and which has to be simple, and sharing the scientific information. And the center to all of this is the trust that we have to create and we have to maintain. Reliable and trustworthy information sources are the need of the hour, and we have to try to find out what we can do in this, because Rome was not built in a day. We have to start working now. So let's do it. Let's get inspired by these examples. So I'm going to share some examples with you which I could find in social media. This is one of the page, Dear Pandemic Facebook page, which shares wonderful information which is evidence based. And why this page is very special? Because it is run by female public health experts and they call themselves nerdy girls. These are various public health experts from different countries, and they are giving answers to the questions, and that is done with evidence. And as you can see, this page has more than 1 lakh followers. This is my personal favorite. This is a public health hero, and this gives me hope that if community understand the importance of what you are doing, community will support you. So he has a very huge fan following. He is Dr. Nirav Shah. He is the director of CDC of Maine state in USA. He is considered as savior. He engages at personal level. He actually posts on Twitter, so you can follow him on that. He gives very transparent information very regularly. He is caring, he is witty, and because of all these things he has huge community cooperation, and it is reflected in the way the pandemic is controlled in this state, and it is very good statistics as compared to other states in USA, despite having older population as compared to other states. If you do not want such personalized examples, there are many guidelines available for information creation and how dissemination should be there. There are various courses available, and one can always follow all these things and come up with their own ideas. But whichever way you choose, we have to go by C4D and ICT. C4D is communication for development. This is a principle by UNICEF, and this approach is people centered, and it is demand driven, and that's why it has the maximum impact. And ICT is information and communication technology. In current days we cannot move ahead without using technology, so we have to be techno savvy, and we should be in a position to use all these technologies in a better way. We all know that for any disaster management, preparedness is the key. So that's what we have to focus on now. CDC has highlighted 6 domains for preparedness, and these are community resilience, incident management, information management, countermeasures and mitigation, surge management, and biosurveillance. So out of all these, majority of these domains are not possible without voluntary civic participation, and voluntary civic participation is not possible without people trusting what guidelines we are giving out, what information we are giving out. So all this comes down to having a relationship. So there are few suggestions from my side. Medicos from other specialties should not give their own opinions regarding concepts of public health in media. We never go and tell how an operation has to be done, right? So they can share their official stand of IAPSM and IPHA. I have seen videos of dentists talking about what is herd immunity and how it can be achieved. So we have to call out against this. We need to work on distrust about public health and social measures. I have seen this among public health practitioners also. So we have to have nice healthy discussions about this amongst ourselves. Risk communication and community participation should be the focus of pandemic control, especially for respiratory diseases, because respiratory diseases cannot be managed by individual level actions, without individual level actions, and that is possible only with informed decisions based on correct information and not based on misinformation. So misinformation is to be countered at every occasion. Everyone needs to be equipped on how to identify misinformation, because it is a very difficult task, and misinformation could be a simple joke which creates distrust, starts people wondering whether the joke is true. So we have to be very careful on what we share, because our opinions and our shares get support of our knowledge also. So what is the roadmap ahead? Public health experts should be the torch bearers. There is no doubt about that. There should be two focus areas. One, recovery, because the pandemic has been very huge and the impacts are on various arenas, and on preparedness, because that is what will save us in future pandemic. There are two lessons to learn: importance of public health and social measures, how people perceive them, and how we have to make them understand the importance of it. Similarly, the threat of anti-science, this group is getting stronger by the day, and these are going to cause issues in future pandemic control as well. There will be two challenges. One is reinstalling the trust, because building trust is a long process, and unless we focus on that, it is difficult. And building confidence in the advices, as well as maintaining the trust and confidence we built. We have to tackle two communities. We have to tackle medicos and non-medicos, because medicos also have shown that they are very much vulnerable for this misinformation, and they are influential people. So there were people who were advising to not to take the vaccine. Some doctors were advising not to take the test. So we have to tackle such misbeliefs also, and we have to tackle the various needs of the non-medical community. There will be two ways of action. One is to create information and also to fight misinformation. So we have to focus on all these two areas. I feel that medical students are the center, because they are the future medical force, and we have still the opportunity to influence them and to make them understand importance of, say, working as a part of team, because pandemic control or management is not a single person's job. We have to work in unison, and every stakeholder in this action has to work in same direction. And the importance of following the guidelines, because guidelines are there so that there will be uniformity, and because of uniformity it will be easier to control the damages. So this key informations we have to tell them. And we are the partners in prevention, IAPSM and IPHA, and we have to work hand in hand in this way ahead. So there are two take-home messages. Linking the past, the present and the future is essential. We need to work on the weakest link of the pandemic response, because that is the area which will cause maximum damage in future. Public health is important for national security from microbial threat, and let's rise to the call of the duty and do our best to protect the nation. So trust is the center of everything. And why it is important? Because public health travels at the speed of trust. More the trust there will be, and there will be better control, better power for public health policies. So let's strive for this, and I request all the seniors and stalwarts to please guide us in the path ahead. So thank you so much for the patient hearing, and I hope I could give you some points for future planning, and hope my experience of this pandemic control was helpful for you. Thank you.